Welcome to the Chordoma Conference. My name is Mike Yaszemski. I'll be co-director along with my radiation oncology partner, Ivy Petersen. We're thankful that you're here. We hope we have an active interaction among everybody here, patients, physicians, caretakers, family members. And there's just a few housekeeping things that Dr. Petersen will go over before we start.
So if you'll look in your packet, there's a little question form that looks like this. This is an opportunity for you to ask questions for the Ask the Expert panel this afternoon. So we'll collect those on the break about lunchtime. So think about what questions you might have and take this opportunity to write those down. There will be time after each of the individual presenters at the end of their presentation to ask a few questions, and we have some mics that we'll pass around for that to answer those questions. You can tweet the conference about using hashtag Chordoma Community. So, with that being said, we would like to have Josh Sommer come up, who's one of our
Executive Director.
There we go.
Thanks. Executive Director at Chordoma Foundation. Josh, as you're coming up, I'll mention two other things. Before one of the breaks, we're going to take a picture of all of us. It's going to be right on this stage. So I'm going to try to corral everybody who's going to be heading for the door to get their next cup of coffee. When we say picture, please come up. We'll be real quick. We'll get all of us as a picture. Welcome. And Josh, thanks for opening the conference and thanks for coming.
Well, thank you, Dr. Yaszemski and Dr. Petersen. I got to say, Mayo Clinic runs like clockwork. This is the most on time we've ever been with a community conference. It's really impressive. Yeah, that's right. Before I get started, I'm hoping that I can advance some slides here. Shannon, do you know how I do that? Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and just start anyway. It's really a pleasure to be here and so wonderful to meet all of you. I see some familiar faces in the audience, but also I think many of you are here for the first time at a Chordoma Community Conference. This is now the 12th Chordoma Community Conference, the 12th time that we've gathered patients and family members and caregivers together. It's the first time we've been in the Midwest and the first time we've done this in partnership with the Mayo Clinic, and we are just really thrilled to be here with all of you. I also want to welcome everyone who's joining us on the live stream. It's being broadcast across the world, so for anyone who's joining remotely, thank you so much for being here. I wanted to start off just by giving some context for what's brought us here today. Some of the history of the Chordoma Foundation and the history of the Chordoma community, as it were. And I guess I'll start off, I know each of us has kind of a unique story and a journey that has brought us here. In my own case, I, like many of you, am a Chordoma survivor, was diagnosed about 10 years ago when I was an undergrad at Duke University. I was studying environmental engineering at the time. I was 18 years old and started coming down with really severe headaches. Much to my surprise, was diagnosed with a skull-based tumor, which was fortunately successfully removed. But I'm sure as many of you did when you were diagnosed. Oh, of course.
Your slides are up.
Oh, great.
Pull this out and press that to advance them.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So this was immediately post-op when I was diagnosed in 2006. And as I was saying, I think as probably many of those of you in this room have experienced, when you're diagnosed with chordoma, there's so many questions that arise. It is such a confusing disease in many ways. There's so much to understand, so many new concepts. So I was kind of an information sponge, searching the internet, trying to find anything I could about this disease that I was facing. And at the time, back in 2006, for those of you who have been on this journey since that point, I think you can attest there was really very little information, very little in the way of resources or support or places to turn for information or guidance. And that was a really challenging and frankly bewildering and frightening experience. But as I learned more, I also became quite distraught and surprised by the statistics that I was reading about the rate of recurrence, about the odds of survival, et cetera. And being 18 years old at the time, really did not want to accept those odds and became determined to do everything in my power to try to change them. Through an online support group that was at that point hosted on MSN. It's now, for those of many of you may know, it's now migrated over to Facebook, but I was able to connect with a number of other patients and family members who similarly shared a desire to try to do something to make a difference in this disease. And as I continued searching and researching and trying to find anyone who might be working to develop better treatments for this disease, through really a stroke of serendipity, found out that the only federally funded chordoma research in the entire country, actually, of all places, was at Duke University, where I was an undergrad. So this was an incredible stroke of luck. And to make a very long story short, I approached this investigator, Dr. Michael Kelly, and tried to understand what he was doing and the work that was going on in his lab, and if there's anything I might be able to do to help. And keep in mind, I was an 18-year-old undergrad studying engineering, so really had nothing to offer in the way of lab skills. But Dr. Kelly was very gracious and allowed me to come work in his lab, which I found to be just an incredibly enthralling and captivating experience. I was really inspired by seeing all the advances that were being made in cancer research, but at the same time frustrated and surprised that those advances were not making their way to chordoma. And in working in the lab, it kind of became clear why that was, that we were one lab working essentially in isolation. We didn't have any collaborators. We didn't know who else was working on chordoma. We didn't know the folks at Mayo, for example, or at Mass General or Hopkins or elsewhere. We lacked the basic resources that we needed to actually do experiments in the lab. So we didn't have tumor tissue to study. We didn't have animal models to work in. Our hands were really tied in many ways. And then on top of that, we really were lacking for funding. So these kind of three challenges really made clear that my working in the lab was not in and of itself going to solve the problem. This was, for me, not an academic exercise. It was not an extracurricular. This was really about solving a problem. And it became clear that a much larger effort was going to be needed to create the conditions to bring many more labs into the field, to overcome the barriers that stood in the way of getting pharmaceutical companies involved, and getting doctors and researchers and scientists collaborating with one another. This picture is not showing up great, but we'll use our imaginations here. In 2007, a small group of us got together and started the Chordoma Foundation to try to overcome those challenges. This, if you can use your imagination, is a dining room table with about 6 of us sitting around it. This is one of our first board meetings of the Chordoma Foundation, and that elbow that you see is my 19-year-old elbow there. And the woman who you see on the left of the screen, her name is Heather Lee. She is someone who has really been a luminary in the chordoma community. We like to say at the Chordoma Foundation, if we had a Mount Rushmore, Heather would very much be on it. She was one of our first board members, was a longtime board chair of the Chordoma Foundation, and it was really the driving force and the inspiration behind starting this community conference series. Many of you may have met her or heard of her. I have to send regrets and sadly and unfortunately, Heather is not able to be with us. I know that this pains her deeply, and it feels there is a real emptiness for all of us on the Chordoma Foundation team, because this is the only community conference of 12 that Heather's not been to. And she would have been here were it not for the fact that she's actually undergoing treatment herself for a recent cancer diagnosis. So our thoughts are with her. I imagine she is watching right now, and Heather, we very much miss you, but feel your presence here. Over time, over the last 10 years now, or almost 10 years now, the foundation has matured from a dining room table operation into a highly effective team. We have a very clear mission, but a two-pronged mission. First of all, and importantly, never losing sight of the fact that our mission is to improve the lives of those affected by chordoma. And there's a lot that can be done even before we develop new treatments to do that. And this gathering today is a part of that. But to improve the lives of those affected by chordoma and to lead the search for a cure, because ultimately the best way that we can improve the lives for all of us who are dealing with this disease is to find a cure, to find more effective therapies. So we've grown up. We are no longer a dining room table operation. We now have a wonderfully dedicated board and staff. This is our board and our staff together at our most recent board retreat. Now, in fact, we've actually grown a little bit. Even since this picture was taken last year, I think we've added 2 new board members and 2 new members of our team. We really view the work of the Chordoma Foundation as being about serving the chordoma patient community. We are here to really funnel and focus the collective passions and energies and resources of this community to help improve the lives of those of us who are facing this disease and to really create a better future for the entire community. We really focus on 3 things. We have 3 core goals that guide us all the time: better treatments, better medical care, and a better experience for everyone facing the disease. And that's really why we're here today. This is it can be a challenging disease, it can be a confusing disease, it can be a lonely and isolating journey. And so the Chordoma Foundation is here to help. We want to help patients and family members learn about the disease, to get the best care possible, to get emotional support from peers or for others when needed, and importantly, to be a part of the solution. Because the reality is that we're a small community, and everyone, unlike more common diseases where there are really large armies of people who are who are rallying and who are working to advance the cause, this is a small, tight-knit community, and really everyone has a role to play, and everyone can make a significant impact. So how do we do that? We have a number of services that we now offer to the chordoma patient community, and I want to recognize our patient services manager, Shannon Yaszemski, who's sitting here in the front row. This conference is really a labor of love of Shannon's, but we were very fortunate to have Shannon join our team about 1.5 years ago now as our first patient services manager. And everything that you see here on the screen is Shannon's work. Shannon does a lot. She wears a lot of hats and works extraordinarily hard. We offer a patient navigation service, so if anyone ever has any questions, needs guidance, needs assistance, overcoming any sort of barriers that stand in the way of getting the care that you need, Shannon and our colleague Megan Hohenstein are here as patient navigators to help. We offer a doctor directory, a list of current clinical trials, etc. We, for the last 8 years now, have been offering a peer support program in which we're able to connect patients and family members who have faced chordoma and gone through this journey with others who are dealing with the disease. And they're able to provide supportive relationships and mentorship and encouragement to help guide those who are new to this disease, new to the community, through their journey with the disease. A big part of what we do is offer conferences like this, which are intended to bring the community together to provide education about the latest treatment advances, the latest research, the latest tools to help deal with all of the challenges that we face as chordoma patients. So some of you may remember, I see Karen and Bill Hermanson in the audience, who I think were with us back in 2008 at the very first Chordoma Community Conference, which we held in Bethesda. I think Tom Delaney was there as well. Maybe is anyone else here? Wonderful. So glad to be joined by people who have been with us for 8 years now. This first conference was hosted in Bethesda in conjunction with the second international chordoma research workshop. Subsequently, my pictures seem to be jumping around here. Subsequently, we've held conferences again in Bethesda, in Amsterdam, in Boston, in Frankfurt, in Los Angeles, in New York, and most recently in Boston. That was just a partial list, but I think as you can see, each time the community is growing. For the first several years of this conference series, we put on these large international conferences. We had people come from all over the world, and what we realized though is that there are so many medical centers across the country who are really expert in treating chordoma, Mayo Clinic certainly being chief among them. And we have a desire to bring the conference to more parts of the country so that more people can experience the conference, can benefit from the conference. And so in 2015, we started partnering with medical centers, with USC in Southern California, with Sloan Kettering, and this is our third regional conference, and we're so pleased and grateful to be here with the Mayo team. Our hope today is threefold. We hope that you get a lot out of this conference, but at the very least, we hope that you'll learn something. If you learn one thing, we think that'll be a success. We hope that you'll connect with at least one other person who can perhaps be an ongoing source of support, a connection to someone else who is sharing this journey. And we hope that if you're interested, that you'll leave this conference inspired and empowered to take action in some way, to be a part of the solution and help join with the community in advancing our common vision for a better future for all of us with this disease. So without further ado, I want to just say a few thank yous, in particular to the course directors, Dr. Yaszemski, Dr. Petersen, the events team and the education team here at the Mayo Clinic, Mike O'Brien and Cindy Hafferty. I really want to recognize the Chordoma Foundation team that has worked to put this event on, Shannon Lazinski, Megan Hohenstein, and as I mentioned, Heather Lee. And in particular, there's one gentleman who I want to recognize, and his name is here at the bottom of the screen, Bob Lennon. And I put him straddling the Chordoma Foundation and Mayo Clinic very intentionally. Bob has an incredibly unique story, and it's really his drive and passion and impetus that inspired or catalyzed us all being here today. So I met Bob about a year ago at our New York conference, and Bob shared with me that he was diagnosed with chordoma a couple years ago. Bob might be the only person that I know of, maybe the only person ever, who has actually been involved in chordoma surgeries before he was diagnosed. Bob might be the only person who ever knew what a chordoma was before he got it. I certainly had never heard of chordoma. So Bob was an anesthesiologist here at the Mayo Clinic for many years. Operated with some of the surgeons that we'll hear from today. When several years ago, he himself was diagnosed with the disease. And one of the things I've learned about Bob is that not only was he a physician and an anesthesiologist, but he's also a general in the Army and commanded a brigade of 5,000 or 6,000 soldiers, ran several different Army hospitals. So when Bob came to us and said, we'd like to do what you've done here in New York at the Mayo Clinic, and I think I can make it happen, there was really no saying no to that. You don't say no to a general. But it was really thanks to Bob's vision and persistence and his leadership that really has led us here today. So Bob, thank you for dreaming this up and for taking the steps to make it happen. Really, really pleased to be here with all of you. This is always one of the most fun parts of the job at the Chordoma Foundation is actually getting to be a part of events like this, and I'm really looking forward to meeting each and every one of you. Please, I'd welcome you to come up during a break, and would love to get a chance to speak with you all. There'll be a reception afterwards. Hopefully we'll get a chance to speak then. And we're also going to be gathering at the Marriott Hotel just down the street. after the reception to continue the conversation and the merriment. So with that, I will turn it back over to our course directors and let the day begin.